Hey guys, it's Mitch. How's it going? Well, I got some time to make up for, so might as well kick off the week with a 48-page special, right? We're taking a look today at the Excalibur Special Edition, or what's it called? The Sword is Drawn? I think that's it. So just before we get into it, if you enjoy the channel, if you feel like you might want to help out a little bit, go subscribe on my Patreon. Links are in the description, gives you early access to everything I do, helps out the channel, helps to buy new comics. Okay, so this is not a first appearance of anything other than the Team Excalibur, as far as I know. I thought about starting off with Excalibur number 1, but seeing as how this is kind of the origin of that team, this seems like a better place. This is a book I never read back in the day. I was vaguely aware of it, mostly through the trading cards, particularly the Jim Lee drawn X-Men Series 1 cards, because half those cards were from Excalibur. Like, who's Kylan? I don't know. Who's Widget? Got me. Cerise, Saturnine, the Warwolves, Gatecrasher, the TechNet. Don't know. It was like this whole other continuity going on the other side of the Atlantic. And it's a curious mix of heroes, I gotta say. I gotta assume I just imagined it starting out as somebody in the X office going, Excalibur. Like starting with the X and going, okay, so mutant book. Well, we kind of have a few of those, and mutant books are good money, so that's probably a good idea. So what mutants aren't on a team? And it's like, well, not too many, really. There's Phoenix, like Rachel Summers, and there's some lone wolf guys who wouldn't really work on a team. Like, you could maybe get one of them, but no, you don't want a whole bunch of them. The new Fantastic Four kind of told us how much that doesn't work. And I mean, I guess Captain Britain is a guy. Like, he's a mutant, I think. I'm not sure if he's a mutant in 1988, because that's when this comes out. I guess he probably is. And there's Megan. I don't know if they know for sure that Megan is a mutant at this point. But that's kind of it, except for the fact that in 1988, as far as the world knows, the X-Men are dead. They died in Texas, trying to defend the world against an otherworldly invasion. Something that very much felt like it prefaced the Inferno crossover, actually. And now there are actually a couple of spare X-Men lying around who didn't happen to be in Texas when the team was killed. I was going to say supposedly killed. No, they were killed and then they were brought back, or not even really. It was more like, here, let's build some new X-Men that have the memories of the old X-Men. But yeah, Shadowcat and Nightcrawler are off in Scotland recuperating from something. And as far as they know, they're the only living X-Men. And Captain Britain has a link to the X-Men, with Psylocke, his sister, being on the team. Like, there's all sorts of things to play around with there, actually. Like, the way I'm explaining this is probably a mess, but it's Chris Claremont books. It's gonna get messy. So we might as well just get into it, and we'll kind of pick things up as we go. So this is also written by Chris Claremont, because Chris Claremont is just gonna write anything that starts or has an X prominently displayed somewhere in the title. And it's going to be drawn by Alan Davis. Alan Davis is a guy who has had some time on the X books. He did a few fill-in issues. He drew a couple of the issues of the Mutant Massacre that are particularly iconic, I believe, as well as at least one annual, I think. And he'd done a bunch of stuff before that. He'd drawn a few stories for 2000 AD, as Brits do. He did a few issues of Alan Moore's Miracle Man. He did a few Batman stories. Like, he'd been around for a little while. He also worked on the original Captain Britain series. And I have his Miracle Man issues, actually. It's interesting seeing early Alan Davis where he isn't super polished, because super polished is how you would describe Alan Davis. Everything he does is incredibly smooth. Like you can see from the cover here, everything just fits on an Alan Davis drawing. There's a fluidity in his figures that is kind of tough to match. Like, it almost feels like his characters are like perfectly carved out of ice sometimes. At this point, at least, he's good with compositions. Apparently early on, he had difficulty in that he wasn't used to drawing comics. So he did the thing that actually I did, where you do drawings and you don't think about the fact that somehow you got to fit word balloons around those drawings. So yeah, that's years before this. At this point, Alan Davis is probably as popular as he's going to get, really, which is a bit of a shame in itself. Like, it's good that he was popular at this time, but I mean, like, Alan Davis is a guy who's good enough. He should have been one of the superstars, like, for the 90s and beyond. And I mean, at that point, everybody was caught up in Liefeld, Lee McFarlane, which is very much about jagged, over-rendered lines. So something with this kind of fluidity, this kind of just, good fundamental drawing skills, it didn't have the same kind of weight with the kids. It's like P. Craig Russell somehow wasn't another Art Adams in terms of like output versus popularities. I don't know why. But anyway, that's its own conversation. We'll get back to that when we do Sandman number 50 at some point. But anyway, the cover here works, of course. This is going to be kind of sum up the issue. This is going to be Excalibur and a whole bunch of guys you wouldn't be familiar with unless you'd been reading Captain Britain before this. So it's Excalibur plus the TechNet versus the Warwolves, or Excalibur versus the TechNet, and they are both also versus the Warwolves. It's a little bit difficult to discern, but yeah, let's get into this. All right, so this is, as I said, written by Chris Claremont, penciled by Alan Davis, inked by Paul Neary, as would often be the case with Alan Davis pencils. Now, this one has special thanks to Mark Farmer for assistance. I'm familiar with the name, but I can't remember what Mark Farmer's inks look like. Lettered by Tom Warzachowski, colored by Glynis Oliver, edited by Ann Nocenti. That's a good name. Good crew all the way down here, really. So we're going to start things out on Weir Island, where Shadowcat is she's trying to sleep, and she's tossing and turning. She can't sleep because she keeps going over in her head how the X-Men are dead. And, she doesn't really have anybody to talk to about this except, like, Nightcrawler, essentially. When all of a sudden she gets told, wakey, wakey, she gets assaulted by a puff, and all of a sudden all of these hands descend on her and start applying makeup and doing her hair and shoving her into her X-Men costume, pushing issues of Uncanny X-Men into her hand to autograph, and then they shove her out a door. It's a strange kind of beginning, but like very nice looking page to start things off. Alan Davis is going to put in a fair amount of detail for a background, for like a nice overhead shot of Shadowcat tossing and turning, leaving plenty of room for word balloons, which is good, because with Claremont, he might take advantage of that. And also, just worth noting, the colors. This is going to be the kind of colors we're going to get for the issue, where they're more of a watercolor kind of feel, which is odd. But I mean, this is a special edition, so that does set it apart a little bit. I think I'd probably prefer the usual brighter colors, but this still doesn't look bad at all. So yeah, Shadowcat gets shoved onto a stage where all of a sudden all of the X-Men are just hanging out. And it's like a between takes shot. And this spread is kind of amazing. We've got everybody here just being casual, down to Wolverine in his bathrobe, reading about gardening, getting his nails done. And Professor X in a big old swing arm director's chair, setting up for the next scene. And it's just awesome looking stuff. He actually doesn't go super heavy on the backgrounds. You can see here that Westchester Mansion in the back is a prop. Like it's just a set, which is a nice touch. And apart from that, there's some that kind of standard paneling for floors and then silhouettes for the lighting. And that's kind of it, really. And we got a little thing down here in the corner saying this is Mojo's New World Picks. So it's like, okay, that's what's going on. She's in Mojo World. But she doesn't realize that at first, so she's super happy to see her ex-buddies again when, hey, shit, I thought you guys were dead. And first person she approaches is Psylocke. And it's like, oh my god, it's so good to see you guys. And Psylocke turns around and she's got no eyes, which is creepy as balls. Thankfully, a PA installs some eyes for her, although that doesn't make things any less creepy. And as she recoils, she falls on Rogue. Rogue treats her like an understudy, basically. And they just kind of seem like a squabbling bunch of actors waiting to be able to take their cues. And that's when Professor X gives them their cues. All of a sudden, they spring into action. They're all in their costumes. All of their powers are working, including Shadowcat. Her powers weren't working a second ago. And it's like none of the last few panels happened. A lot going on from panel to panel. Like, great expressions when they're supposed to have expressions. Like Psylocke here, like she's just kind of frozen. But, on Shadowcat, on Rogue, on Professor X with his manic look here, it looks like Alan Davis really likes drawing hair, which, good for you. Maybe you've got hair and you can use reference. I don't know. And great gestures with the figure work, where everything looks just, it all looks natural. Nothing looks stiff or posed. It's all very nice. So Shadowcat falls behind because her powers coming back on kind of catches her off guard, and she falls through some of the set, and she gets approached by Rachel Summers. Rachel says some portentous things, and I think we're all kind of getting the impression that this is a dream sequence now. And after her brief back and forth with Kitty, Professor X goes, you're not supposed to be here. You ran out on the X-Men. You got nothing to do with this production. And she starts to manifest like the Phoenix effect, but all of a sudden chains manifest around her limbs, and all of the X-Men grab a chain, just hold her in place until Shadowcat runs up and touches her, so she makes her partially incorporeal. She's able to escape the chains, which just leaves Shadowcat stuck here with a bunch of pissed off ex-actors who are all looking at her and glaring. And then all of a sudden they start bursting out of their skin suits. It turns out these are werewolves. And they just all of a sudden descend on her, which would be some creepy stuff to see. Like if you were a kid reading this. I assume this was mostly sold on the direct market, so the chances of seeing it on the newsstand probably would have been pretty slim. But like that's the kind of thing that would stick out to you if you were like 10 reading this. And just a really nice mix of drawings, just kind of showcasing Alan Davis's abilities right off the bat. You know, like, yeah, we get our big kind of hero shot. Yeah, kind of big. We also get talking head panels. We get like vertical action panels. We get our no background, no panel border kind of deal. We've got this shot here with, 8 or 9 X people all crammed into one horizontal panel, just kind of glaring Kitty down. And then this other one here where they're just, all of a sudden bursting out monsters and descending on her in a suddenly horror panel. It's a nice little collection. And of course, at that point, Kitty wakes up. She hasn't calmed down from her dream yet. She goes running away from her bed, right through the wall, phases through it, and goes straight outside just in time to see the sunrise with the Phoenix effect in it. And now we're going to get Kitty contemplating her dream, thinking about Rachel, thinking about the X-Men being lost again, all that kind of stuff. Having a nice little reverie. Looking very young in this panel here, which makes me wonder just how old she's meant to be at this time. Because, the X-Men would have taken off, like they would have been killed in the 230s. I do recall that Kitty is still, maybe 15, 16, around, the 170s. So I imagine she's probably, late teens, maybe even around 20. That's about it. Well, of course, every other X-Man hasn't aged a day. Goes back inside, wants to pet Lockheed for some comfort, but she's still phased. Apparently at this point, phasing is her natural state, and she has to concentrate to remain corporeal. And this is just another thing piled up on her nightmare, and it's just too much tension, and, she's going to have a bit of a breakdown, as Kitty was always prone to do. Again, great expressions, stuff like this can be tough, particularly with a younger girl, to keep it from making her look too old. I feel like Alan Davis didn't quite pull it off. She does look a little bit older there, but it's fine. It's not like you go, ew, what the hell happened to Shadowcat there? Okay, so from there, we're going to cut to Megan. And this might be the first time a lot of people are reading about Megan. She was a regular in Captain Britain, from what I understand, where her and Captain Britain are in a relationship at this point. Megan's history is that when she was born in a snowstorm to, I think, some nomads, her mutant ability was in effect immediately upon birth, and she adapted to the cold by growing fur. And she's an empathic shapeshifter. So her parents saw her as a monster. So because of that, she kept growing more and more monstrous, growing like horns and like antenna and shit. So they locked her in a camper basically for her entire childhood, where she just grew up watching TV. So she's still very childlike and unsocialized, I believe, and she's illiterate. She doesn't understand a lot of things. She's that kind of childlike character. Not sure why she can fly, but apparently she can. Starts her day out by swimming with some dolphins, and she takes on dolphin characteristics, which is nice. Alan Davis making a character looking even more fluid than usual. And kind of decides she's going to go and stop in on her boyfriend. So she goes to the lighthouse that he's the guardian of, because apparently that's the deal with Captain Britain. I didn't realize that was what he did. He's the guardian of a lighthouse. It makes more sense in that the lighthouse seems to be kind of a dimensional gateway, but when you just say it he hangs out in a lighthouse and just makes sure nobody threatens the light. That's okay. That seems like a pretty sweet gig for a superhero. Flies inside, turns out somebody's trashed the place. There's all sorts of pictures all over the place, mostly featuring Captain Britain's sister, Psylocke, and him. Photos, magazine covers, all that stuff. Apparently, Psylocke was sort of a fashion icon, which I never got that impression reading Uncanny X-Men, but I didn't read a lot of the Psylocke era. And the TV's on, and they replay the news that the X-Men have been killed in Texas, and naturally they got the big shot of Psylocke up on the TV, and that sends Megan into near hysterics. Goes flying through the place looking for Captain Britain. Captain Britain's drowning his sorrows, so yeah, he's grieving his sister, and he's blaming himself for not helping out or something, you know, that survivor's guilt kind of thing. Megan tries to talk him through it, and that was just the wrong thing to say because he starts trashing the place again, calls her a changeling cow, which is, oh, dude, that's not okay, and drives her out of the room so that he can sulk some more. Megan, of course, flies up to her room and at first takes it very personally, like maybe he doesn't love me after all, and her face kind of reflects what her emotions go through. So, you know, first she kind of like changes back into being like a little kid, but then she kind of snaps out of it and going, no, he's just grieving. And she, you know, kind of adjusts back to her usual state, which is this glamorous girl, which is like, oh shit, is that just like a form she picked? And it's like, well, it's not quite like that. It's more like Captain Britain thinks she's beautiful. So since she's around him all the time, that's how she projects herself as somebody beautiful. It's like, okay, you get the impression Megan doesn't really have like a set face. So anyway, Megan knows that she can't really help Captain Britain at the time, so what she's going to do is she's going to go and fly over to Muir Island to go and talk to, like, the only other person she knows how to talk to, which is Shadowcat. Of course, as I said, she's illiterate, so she just leaves a little ideogram. You know, here's the lighthouse, here's the house with the cat, that's where I'm going, see ya. And Alan Davis likes to play around with panel placement, like particularly overlapping panels over other ones I've noticed, which is cool. Like, it doesn't really add a ton, but it certainly looks nice. All right, so now we're cutting to essentially a danger room on Muir Island at Moira's estate, or her house, her lab, I don't know. And Nightcrawler's getting a workout in with all sorts of musketeer-looking droids, and, you know, doing his thing, flipping all over the place, taking him out, except that one of them tags him because he's not 100% at this point. Like, the whole reason Nightcrawler wasn't in Texas to die with the other X-Men was because he'd been injured and he was convalescing. So teleports to the control panel, doesn't quite get there, but just about, and has to try and reach out and turn everything off before he gets killed by all of these robots that have basically been set at a difficulty way too high for him to deal with at this point. Of course, at that point, Shadowcat runs through the wall, short circuits everything, all the robots fall down, and she cusses him out for being an asshole and trying to get himself killed through training. And some classic stuff for Nightcrawler, being all swashbuckly and shit. This is like the perfect version of Nightcrawler. I feel like every once in a while they try and make him super serious to lean on his like religious side. It's like, okay, that's fine, but this is actually Nightcrawler, like the fun-loving, you know, bouncing all over the place, Errol Flynn kind of guy. So Kitty keeps cussing him out, and he kind of storms out of the mini danger room, and they're going to go for a bit of a walk where Nightcrawler's going to tell Shadowcat about this weird dream he had, where he was on a movie set with these fake X-Men, and then Rachel Summers showed up, and then the X-Men all turned into werewolves. So it's like, okay, this isn't just you had a weird nightmare, this is something that's going to be a plot point. Okay, good to know. So, okay, what looks like what they're doing is they're walking from Moira's, laboratory to the house that they're staying. Okay, so that's what the deal is. And really nice background shots. This is, I think, where the watercolor coloring makes a difference. Like on just the regular characters, not so much. It just kind of feels a little washed out. But for the backgrounds, you're able to get a whole lot of nuance in there. It's some really nice looking stuff. So once they get inside, there's a knock at the door. Nightcrawler naturally immediately hides because it's probably best to not have the Blue Devil looking guy just apparent when a door opens. Only probably wouldn't have mattered too much in this case because this is Gatecrasher that's knocking, which is a character I've never actually seen in a comic book. I just saw her on the X-Men trading cards. Gigantic interdimensional alien. Bounty hunter, mercenary, something along those lines. Very polite, though, which is nice. And she asks, basically, like, can I speak to the owner of the house? Well, she's out. Can we, take a message for you or something? And I like Gatecrasher's response, which is, regrettably, dear girl, time oppresses and delays cannot be countenanced. It's like, oh, I like that turn of phrase. That's nice. And at that point, Megan arrives. She was underway there. She sees Gatecrasher. She's familiar with Gatecrasher because her and the TechNet, which is Gatecrasher's group, are frequent opponents in the Captain Britain comic. But I do like the Gatecrasher character. She's like this big, bruising, alien-looking thing who's super smiley. And, you know, just like, yeah, no, I've got business to do, but there's no reason to be like, you know, an asshole about it. Love this opening shot, too, of her walking through the door and just dwarfing everything else in the room. So, Gatecrasher has to explain to Megan, because Megan, you know, just sees Gatecrasher as an opponent, as like an antagonist. So she has to prove, no, I'm here on like legit business. Pulls out her little messaging thing, and a big old hologram of Saturnine appears in the room, which Kurt immediately goes, oh, we should actually listen and like pay attention to this. And kind of a fun little bit between Megan and Shadowcat here. Megan's like, I never understood what Brian saw in that witch. And Shadowcat's just like, nah, I can kind of see it. So the Saturnine hologram is going to explain what the deal is. Gatecrasher has been sent by Saturnine to go and look for Rachel Summers. Saturnine, in this case, is like a guardian. She's the Majestrix. What the fuck is the deal? Omniversal Majestrix, responsible for the maintenance of order and reality in this sector of creation. So she's like regional manager for this part of the universe. Gotta love Alan Davis's version of her, which is like just super pretty. Makes her all glamorous and shit. And stresses that, yeah, so Rachel Summers is going to have to be taken in. She's escaped. She's too powerful to be let loose, roaming around the galaxy. Gatecrasher has been tasked to capture her, and she has the authority to hire on deputies to help her out. So that's what she's going to do. Shadowcat isn't interested in helping because she knows Rachel, and she's going to get ready to fight Gatecrasher, but Gatecrasher has her TechNet buddies to back her up. Big old splash page of, like, not X-Men, not even Excalibur, getting surrounded by these weird aliens. So now we've finally gotten to our first conflict of the issue right around page 20, which is too late, obviously, for a regular comic, unless it's been a really good comic up until then, but just fine for a 48-page special. And the only thing really that kind of feels out of place is, why is Gatecrasher at Moira's house? It seems like that's what her intention was to first approach Moira McTaggart, because, I mean, this is her place, so she must be looking for the owner to that place. Otherwise, she just landed in a random part of England and figured, this is a living thing, it can probably help me. And it just happened to be populated by X people. Like, everything from here is fine, it's just that original opening thing of, why are you here? Like, you know, I understand why you're on this plane, what you're trying to do, but why are you in this particular place that you can't really get around without a Deus Ex Machina of some kind? So just noting that, we can now move on to the fight that's going to happen. Nice big splash page here. These really are like some really weird looking characters, even for X people. I don't know if they're Alan Davis designs. I get the impression they might be, but they're all like very different from each other. And, you know, a lot of them are very different from what you usually see in an X-Men comic book, or like an American comic book. So, yeah, the X-Men naturally going to leap into action. Nice big leap from Nightcrawler here. Shadowcat goes phasing through Gatecrasher, and Scatterbrain does something to knock her out. Great sequence of panels. I guess this is all just one panel, but I love the receding background here, and the almost animation style of Shadowcat doing a faceplant. I don't know what Scatterbrain's ability is exactly. She does something mental to her, and she does something again, which isn't quite this, from what I remember. I don't exactly remember how it goes. Megan's the next one to get taken care of. Body Bag hits her with this enzyme that he creates and swallows her, capturing her in this sack on his back. And Nightcrawler is getting surrounded by Gatecrasher, and whoever this guy is, I don't even remember what his name was meant to be. I think he gets killed in this issue. So naturally, what Nightcrawler's going to do, he's going to teleport away, which Gatecrasher did not see coming. Gatecrasher has no idea who Nightcrawler even is. But they've got Megan. Body Bag soon captures Shadowcat because she's knocked out of commission as well. So they've got themselves some hostages, and they say they're going to keep the girls as bargaining chips, and then they'll be on their merry way. No real word about who they're going to be bargaining chips for. Well, I guess they know that Megan is linked to Captain Britain, so maybe they're going to try and blackmail Captain Britain to help them to find Rachel. That makes some sense. So that's where we're going to leave our X people for the moment. We're going to cut now to Rachel, who's like falling through reality, you get the impression. So she hasn't actually made landfall on Earth just yet. It's just, I think that Saturnine knows that that's where she's headed to, so she's trying to cut her off. So she lands somewhere with a big old explosion, and turns out she's in the middle of some crazy kind of celebration. Looks like a Mad Hatter tea party. Well, I mean, there is the Mad Hatter right there. But, we got like all these insane creatures all around her, which Alan Davis seems to be particularly good at, just like the cartooning aspect of it. I don't think he's got any kind of background in animation, but he definitely has like sort of that innate cartooning ability that just allows him to, come up with all sorts of characters, have them all look nice and different, and there's again, nothing forced about it. There's nothing forced about anything Alan Davis does. So Rachel tries to leave. She has all those chains on her that she had in the dream, that Shadowcat and apparently Nightcrawler had. All of the party goers around her are kind of grumbling about this person who just appeared out of nowhere and smashed their cake and all their, their craft services. And she gets like all pissed off, which is a bad thing for Phoenix, of course. She's like super telepathic, telekinetic. And all of the party goers snatch up the chains that were hanging off her, and we get a repeat of the shot where people are kind of holding her in place. And at that point, that's when the werewolves show up. Big old splash page. Werewolves are a weird thing. I think this is their first appearance, and like they've got no real features. But I mean, Alan Davis at least can make them look interesting because he can come up with some decent shines for them. But I wonder how often they've shown up. I mean, first of all, I wonder how often they've shown up. I feel like I've never seen werewolves in a comic before, or like even mentioned. But like a lesser penciler is going to have difficulty making these things look interesting. Alan Davis puts all sorts of fluid textures all over them. They look fine. But, unless you're either Alan Davis or Ron Lim or something, these aren't going to look very good. So yeah, maybe other X artists have avoided them up until this point. Or maybe just nobody knows what to do with them. The whole deal with werewolves is that they're, they're hunting dogs for Mojo. But I've seen a few Mojo stories where they're not mentioned at all. So, I don't know. Rachel tries to fight them off, but she can't really. Her telekinesis doesn't work against the werewolves. It just kind of slides right off them. So instead, what she does is she picks up, like there's all sorts of crap strewn all over the room from when she originally made landfall. So she's going to pick all of that up and smash that into the werewolves. And it gets pretty slapsticky as she's like throwing jello molds at these like silvery wolf things. But one gets a good slash in, which pisses her off. And she uses her chains to wrap it up and smash it into a wall, busting herself a hole that she can leave through. So with all of the weird characters that she's seeing, with this weird situation she's in, the werewolves, Rachel's thinking, shit, I landed on Mojo World somewhere. I'm going to have to figure out a way home. And busting out, she finds out, no, wait, I'm actually in London. And helpfully, the hole that she crawls through has a poster over it stating what exactly she was at, which was a masquerade fancy dress benefit. So those were people that were, saw somebody appear out of nowhere, smash their cake, and they're like, grab those chains. We're gonna, I don't know, fucking string her up or something. But very nice shot of downtown London. Not an overabundance of detail in the buildings, I suppose, but it feels like there is. And all the traffic works beautifully. Like there's nothing Alan Davis can't draw, it feels like. So with the hole in the wall now, all the werewolves follow her through, just like streaming through it. They're just looking relentless. Rachel goes running down into the subway. I'm not sure why she doesn't fly here, but it doesn't matter. I guess it's, it's a sequence. Let's do a sequence. Runs onto the tube, gets on just in time. The door closes on the werewolf and the tube takes off, but werewolf hangs on to the end of it and starts slashing it open. But at that point, Rachel is, she's got the subway car itself to use against the werewolf to kind of fend it off, knocks it back. Awesome shot. With her all like uplit, backlit, get the Phoenix effect in there, get the werewolf getting thrown back against the third rail, gets electrocuted. And honestly, everything like really clear. Like in addition to just having an ability to draw everything, Alan Davis has really nice storytelling where there's no confusion about what's going on panel to panel. You can kind of see how these would look without the word balloons. And like these would feel like pretty boring shots. Like, you know, the subway car speeding away. Wait, like this is such a nothing shot. And you think about like what the image guys do where it's like, no, every shot's gotta be cool. And it's like, well, yeah, if you don't care about your readers not knowing what the hell is going on, yeah, you can do it that way. So Rachel's gotten away. She does have to, you know, she does have this car full of just like freaked out English people behind her, but they're not going to do anything in this case. She's pretty freaky looking. The other werewolves come across their downed compatriot, so they all gather around the body and howl, which is some nice stuff, kind of chilling. And off in the distance, Gatecrasher and the TechNet hear the howls, but it's like, that's okay, that doesn't have anything to do with us specifically. And Gatecrasher's little lizard companion here, who's her teleporter, who she hates, but he's extremely useful, so she keeps him around, tells her that he's sensed Phoenix. I was like, good, okay, well, that's what we're here for. Let's go take care of that. So now we're done with that scene here. This is going forward fairly lockstep. I mean, you know, there's no real digressions going on. This book has a very clear purpose, which is to get everybody together, get them into a conflict, and get them to realize, hey, we're stronger as a team. We should work together. And then we should make a pact. I think they actually do make a pact. But from there, we're going to cut to the lighthouse. Back to the lighthouse. The lighthouse is central. I mean, it is. It's a lighthouse, man. Where a drunken Captain Britain is helped to his feet by a shadowed stranger, takes him outside and dumps him into the water. Captain Britain springs up, great looking shot, flinging back his head, flinging the water everywhere, flies inside, ready for battle. Only it turns out that the stranger was actually Nightcrawler, who was just like, yeah, no, I needed you awake and sober. We've got some things to do. So Nightcrawler explains the whole deal, explains how Megan and Kitty have been captured and how they're searching for Rachel. And Captain Britain is still feeling sorry for himself, where he doesn't really want to get involved. So Nightcrawler throws Captain Britain up against the wall, which is fun, because, I mean, basically Captain Britain would have to allow him to do that, or maybe just be, you know, he's still, like, maybe he's hungover, and he just can't stop him at the moment. Great looking expression here for Captain Britain, and his gigantic poofy mane. You gotta wonder how he fits that mane inside of his helmet. And Nightcrawler doesn't really convince him before he leaves. He basically, you know, goes, okay, fine, I gotta do it myself. Calls him a coward, essentially, and just walks out, which throws Captain Britain into a rage, and he fucks up his kitchen floor. Yeah, this is the kind of stuff I don't think the watercolor really works as well for. It just kind of tends to look a little smeary, a little blotchy. You know, there's pros and there's cons. So from there, we're going to cut to downtown London, where Rachel Summers is wandering through the streets, the completely deserted streets by the looks of it. With the fog and everything, great looking moody shot. At this point, she doesn't really have an objective. She's thinking, maybe I can go find the X-Men and join back up with them. It kind of sucks that I left them, you know, just kind of deserted them before. But, I mean, they seem like a pretty forgiving bunch. Maybe they'll take me back, you know, not knowing that they're supposedly dead at this point. And I'm not sure where she got the fringe jacket, but she has a fringe jacket. Looks very nice. And while she ponders what to do next, she looks in the window of a fantasy store where she finds all sorts of recreations. I suppose these are meant to be recreations of swords, although we really only see the one, which is naturally Excalibur. And while she's looking in the window, some reflections show up behind her. She turns around, but a little bit too late, gets swallowed up by Body Bag and stored in, you know, one of those little clear bubbles on his back. And that's, oh shit, like the TechNet one. They found her. Again, awesome looking cartoony stuff with this giant alien lizard swallowing up Rachel, you know, burping as he's like digesting her. And yes, the TechNet are like, cool, now we can just go home. We're like, what are we going to do with the other two girls? Oh, we'll leave them on the side of the road here. I'm sure they'll be fine. Except at that point, that's when they get jumped by the werewolves, because the werewolves are also after Rachel, obviously. Awesome shot here. Get a Dutch angle, low angle, as they spring in from all sides, just busting windows and zooming in on the TechNet. That is just great looking stuff. And the TechNet have to fend off the werewolves. Nice big panel here of them getting thrown all around. I think this is where this guy dies, actually, this guy with the 4 arms. And yeah, like every member has a werewolf except for Gatecrasher. Gatecrasher's the leader. She's just kind of like issuing them orders. Like, we are here on official business. Get out of our way, that sort of thing. Naturally, they don't, so she has to get in on the action and starts zapping werewolves. And Nightcrawler has found them. I mean, I guess they're kicking up a bit of a fuss. And nice shot of him, from the low angle, looking up, just kind of hanging onto a pole. And, I like these buildings here. They're very simple, but they're nice and effective. Oh, they do explain what happened. That he had a portable Cerebro sensor pack. So that's where I guess how he followed Megan and Shadowcat. So naturally, Nightcrawler isn't going to just wait until the conflict is over. He's going to get right into the middle of it. He's right over Body Bag here. So leaps, and that thing looks kind of crazy, where it just looks like a giant praying mantis looking thing. Leaps down onto the head of Body Bag. Huge cartoony shot of just the neck getting stretched out and getting slammed against the floor here. Looks great. There's a werewolf right there who starts taking swipes at him. But Nightcrawler's agile enough that he can just dodge out of the way. And when it takes one big swipe, which he leaps over, it opens up all the bubbles on Body Bag's back. So that's going to free the girls. So just, yeah, like a nice couple of pages of some fun fight stuff that gets like a little slapsticky. It feels like Alan Davis likes to inject a sense of humor into like most aspects of the comic, really, which I appreciate. So yeah, now we get this shot here of Body Bag knocked out while the girls just kind of ooze out of his back. That's pretty gross. Rachel's the first one to wake up. I assume through a combination of her being the last one. She's been very recently captured. Also, she's very powerful. And, good timing because Nightcrawler's starting to get overpowered by this werewolf thing. Rachel, of course, can't help. I mean, for one thing, she's pretty groggy. And for another thing, we've established earlier that her telekinesis doesn't work against the werewolves. It's like, cool, so I'm just going to get ripped to shreds then. Except that's when Gatecrasher intervenes. Nice looking hand. Like all the connecting wrist muscles and stuff. Good stuff. Tosses aside the werewolf easily and grabs Nightcrawler. Doesn't like that he's intervened. Doesn't like that he's maimed one of her employees, I guess. So she's going to take it out on him. Except that is when the cavalry approaches because Captain Britain is here. I have to say, out of everybody in this comic, like all of the weird characters and everything, Captain Britain kind of looks the silliest. Like everybody else, the TechNet, the werewolves, you can explain it away. It's like, oh yeah, no, they're aliens. And it's like Captain Britain's just a guy who likes to wear that. And Captain America, and Captain Britain, there we go, gets blindsided by one of the TechNet. This is Thug. I guess that hasn't been taken before. Smacks him with a werewolf, nice and creative, right into a shop nearby and goes leaping in after him. I like this shot quite a bit. Get the thankless shot. It's like I needed to fit too many panels in to do the panel I wanted to do, which was probably like a horizontal thing of the TechNet swarming over Rachel. But this does work just as well, where we get the far away vertical panel showing everybody getting ready to just go after Rachel here. Before she can really do anything, because she would be able to take out at least Gatecrasher, like she's got her telekinesis thing. But she gets captured by one of the tech. I'm not sure which one this is. There's a lot of them. And they all have very, very specific abilities. So this one appears to ensnare her in energy bands that he shoots out of his head. So it's like, okay, okay. Can that be used in other ways? I'm sure it could be. But this, again, it seems very specific. Shadowcat tries to run to the rescue. She's still super groggy. But she figures maybe she can phase Rachel through the energy bands. But then Joy Boy, who's this like floating kind of baby creature, just shows up behind her. And his deal is he can take her fondest desire and like genie twist it, so her desire is to be more solid. So naturally, Joy Boy makes her as solid as possible and turns her into just like a gigantic lump who can't move. Again, like really cartoony, really like fun stuff. Like this whole fight is just fun. One of the werewolves is going to try and ambush Ring Toss. That's his name. Only it gets captured by China Doll, which is this one here. And China Doll's whole thing is that she can shrink things down. Again, super specific, but very different look from the rest of the group. So that's cool. Megan starts coming too. She sees Captain Britain fighting Thug. It's like, I need to go and rescue my man. And that's when Waxworks finds her and kind of turns her into jelly. Fun drawing. I guess she would be like particularly susceptible to that being a shapeshifter. Maybe not. I don't know how often Waxworks shows up and does anything interesting. Captain Britain looks out the window, sees that happening as he's taking care of Thug and is going to go and rescue her. There's a lot of, I'm going to rescue you. No, you're not, because another member of the TechNet has a very specific ability that will deal with you in this situation. So in this case, it's Scatterbrain, who, again, does something to his brain, so he just kind of freezes, although he looks like he's having a good time. Yeah, the interesting choice with Scatterbrain is that he doesn't draw her legs, he does them as a silhouette. Everything else is, like, properly delineated. Did he do that before? I feel like he did. Yeah, no, he did do that before here. And, I mean, here it's a little less obvious, but yeah, no, that is how he's decided to draw her. Okay, cool. Nightcrawler's like, we are getting severely messed up because the TechNet's working as a team. You know, they're used to working together. They back each other up. Meanwhile, we're all just a bunch of individuals trying to do our own thing. So let's try and turn that around a little bit. I get fun shot, another low angle. Whenever I just got to do more low angles, I think. They're not fun to draw a lot of the time, but they just work so often. So what he's going to do is he's tangling with a werewolf. He's going to flip it into ring toss. So that should stop Phoenix from being captured, and the pair of them go tumbling into Waxworks, so that's going to free Megan. So with Phoenix free, she sees Joy Boy, and she's gonna just like deflated balloon him all over the place, and that's going to free Shadowcat. So, okay, now the group is basically all okay to work together, theoretically. Nightcrawler kicks China-Doll into Gatecrasher, and apparently China-Doll doesn't have control over her powers, so Gatecrasher shrinks to maybe 4 feet tall, which is probably like half of her usual size or less. So at this point, the TechNet have actually been pretty much all incapacitated. Shadowcat gets the last punch in. Yeah, you kind of wonder if Gatecrasher is actually very much stronger than anybody else. She looks like she should be. What's her power level look like? Okay, so it looks like her strength is 3. So, like, peak human strength. I think Captain America is also a 3. So potentially, yeah, Shadowcat could hurt her. So with that, the TechNet decide, all right, this group of mutants is getting to be too much of a problem. They're all on their feet and they're ready to attack again. Meanwhile, the TechNet are scattered and either knocked out or just, they're out of the fight for the moment. We actually probably can't win from this position. So they just teleport away. The Warwolves do the same thing. Kind of picked a bad time to jump a bunch of guys in weird-looking tights. And, yeah, the group of mutants are left to go, hey, shit, we figured out a way to win that. Cool. And we get a nice shot of them walking through the debris of their battle, which I feel like we don't see a lot of. Megan and Captain Britain get smoochy. It's like, oh, that's actually kind of sweet. Okay. And Phoenix immediately goes to see how that replica Excalibur sword is doing. It looks like it's not too bad, although the window got shattered. And she turns around as Nightcrawler and Shadowcat are there. They know her from her X-Men days, and they get a nice little reunion, which is nice. So after that, they're all going to go back to Muir Island, and they're going to tell X stories. Actually, Shadowcat talks about the first time she went through the danger room, which I remember reading about, where it's been set at high danger. And they say here, Professor X spent weeks programming the danger room for her trial session, and then she just walked through it, phased. Nightcrawler talks about how Wolverine once challenged him to walk down Main Street of Salem Center, undisguised in his natural shape, which I don't ever remember reading, but I mean, if there's somebody who's going to know that happened, Claremont's the guy, so maybe it did. They turn to Rachel to see if she's got any memories she wants to share about being with the X-Men, but she doesn't at this time. She has some kind of thing going on where her memory's been messed with. And she's not entirely sure what actually happened and what didn't, it seems like. But anyway, they've got their fire and, they've won a battle together. That was fun. But now it's time to go home. Captain Britain's going to take Megan back to their lighthouse. So I guess Shadowcat and Nightcrawler are going to go back to Moira's place. Rachel's probably free to stay there for a while, but there's no X people to go to. That they're able to tell her that at least. And Rachel brings up that, okay, wait a minute, with the X-Men gone, what about Charles's dream? The whole thing about uniting humans and mutants. Is anybody fighting for that now? Cool shot of Rachel looking into the fire and it kind of reflecting the Phoenix effect back in her eyes. And, it's like, okay, that's actually a good point with Xavier's dream and everything. And the mention of a dream brings Kitty and Nightcrawler back to the dream they had earlier that kind of prefaced all of this. And some portentous things that were said there. It's like, oh, maybe there's a series in this somewhere. And from there, they transitioned to King Arthur's dream. I guess Phoenix has King Arthur on the brain sheet. There was that replica sword that seemed awfully important to somebody. And there's going to be kind of a contrived comparison between King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table to a bunch of mutants who get into fights. But it's convincing enough for the rest of them to decide, you know what, yeah, no, we should stick around because there's always room for another X book. And we get a big old splash group shot of our new super team, which feels like a weird mix of just like a bunch of guys that don't necessarily have a bunch to do with each other, but it's like, you know what, actually, they all do know, well, I mean, Phoenix knows these two fairly well. These two know Captain Britain and Megan. That all works fine. And in terms of their powers, actually, there's a nice mix with the telepath telekinetic, with the big dumb strong guy, with, Kitty doing her kitty thing. Like, they can actually do a whole bunch of different things in a lot of different scenarios. It's a good mix of guys. I don't know what that is. Is that a TechNet guy? Or did Alan Davis just feel like drawing something weird? Who knows? Anyway, somebody knows. Somebody's going to tell me. But that's going to do it for Excalibur Special Edition, or Excalibur, the Sword is Drawn. It's a pretty good book. It accomplishes what it needs to accomplish. It gets a little contrived here and there, and there's a couple of things that just kind of pop up without any real sort of motivation. But, I mean, I think that's kind of par for the course with Claremont, where he just writes sloppy. And in the meantime, we accomplish an awful lot. We establish the state of all of our different Excalibur people. They all had kind of some rough shit happening recently. There were a bunch of people who seemed like they couldn't really band together against much of anything, but they were able to against a common threat at the end. And we got a nice, big, fun fight that went on for quite a while. And, of course, everything looks absolutely gorgeous. There aren't a lot of really impressive visuals in terms of like knock you on your ass kind of thing, but everything just looks really nice. It all flows together nicely. And yeah, this was always one of those things I kind of wanted to read one day to see, is that book any good? Yeah, no, it is. It's pretty good. It's not one of the best X tales of all time or anything, but it's absolutely solid. So maybe we'll do a little bit more Excalibur at some point in the future. It's, just always a good idea to check out some more Alan Davis artwork, I think. But for this one anyway, that's going to do it. Thanks very much for watching. If you like this video, please hit like, hit subscribe, hit the notification so you know when the next one's coming out. Go over and subscribe on my Patreon. Gives you early access to everything I do, from the Blood Force stuff to the YouTube videos before they get uploaded to YouTube, as well as some Patreon exclusive content. You can also follow me on Instagram and DM me there for commissions, and you can join the Blood Force Discord server. But yeah, that's going to do it. Thanks again for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.